Today, we're back on Rolling Thunder, our supercharged 600 horsepower track-ready Ford Ranger. We're adding a custom gauge display built from the Ranger's stock gauge cluster, and we're repairing hail dents on our hood the easy way. It's all today here on Trucks.
Hey guys, welcome to Trucks. Well, we are on a mission, and that mission is to get Project Rolling Thunder out from within these four walls and out onto the road. Now, we've got a ton of stuff to do, but we don't want to gloss over all the good stuff. We want to show you guys some good, solid tech. Part of that is the paint and body process. Now, we've got some of the panels primed, but we've still got some damage here on the hood in the form of some mild hail damage. Now, we're going to show you a process today that you've probably never seen before, and it's an unconventional way to take care of damage like this. It's cool, so stick around.
Now, while Kevin's doing some pretty cool paint and body tech, I'm going to get to work installing these gauges. Now, for stage one of Project Rolling Thunder, well, we just stuck with the stock instrument cluster, and it was sufficient. But for stage two, and especially with forced induction, we not only want more accurate instrumentation, we want to be able to keep tabs on more things. Our drivetrain's gotten kind of expensive, and we don't want to risk damage because we didn't have enough information in front of us. Now, the challenge is going to be making these gauges look good within the confines of the stock dash. I guess we could get rid of the cluster and the trim bezel and just hang a flat aluminum panel and install our gauges and call it a day. But I've already gotten a little too carried away with the race car look of this truck, and we'd prefer the appearance of a stock dash. Well, somewhat stock anyway. So I'm going to install whatever gauges I can within the instrument cluster bezel. The rest will get neatly installed in the dash, with the exception of the tachometer, which will probably hang from the roll cage A-pillar tubing.
Now, the primer surfacer that you see on Rolling Thunder and a lot of the other projects here in Power Block is a product called Rust Defender by a company called Clausen. We get it from Brian and the guys at Auto Body Color and Supply, and it builds super, super thick. It even says sprayable filler right on the can. Now, the gold color is the Rust Defender, but they make a product called All You Need, which is essentially the same, just colored differently. It comes in light gray, dark gray, tan, white, and red. But before I show you the All You Need, I want to show you this. This is a typical urethane primer surfacer. It's just some overmix in the bottom of a mixing cup liner. Now, look at all the space in around that. That shows you that that has shrunk over time. And this, well, it's wasted overmix, but it shows you very clearly just how much a urethane primer surfacer can shrink back over time. Now, when your primer shrinks, your bodywork shrinks, and the sand scratches swell back through, and your paint job, your expensive paint, is going to show all of that shrinkage. Nobody wants that. But that is not the case with the Clausen products. Check this out. This is the All You Need polyester spray filler in the same type of mixing cup. And you can see there's very little space around the overmix, which is impressive. It means it didn't shrink very much, especially when you consider this has been sitting there for nearly 2 years. Now, what's equally as impressive is this. Look how thick that is. That's ridiculous. There's no way that you could ever get away with that type of mill thickness with a urethane primer surfacer without it shrinking and cracking apart, solvent craters forming in it. And this, to me, is the testimonial of what an impressive product this Clausen stuff is. Now, these products use what's in the can and a little bit of catalyst. No reducer is added, which is part of the reason that they build so well and never shrink back. And typically, you use a large fluid tip spray gun to apply this and layer it up by spraying it. The problem with that is that you pretty much need a dedicated gun with a huge orifice, 1.9, 2.0. Personally, I spray polys with a 2.3, which is a giant gun and makes it pretty much useless for any other type of painting. But today, we're going to show you how to take advantage of the huge build capability of this product and show you some alternative methods of application, including brushes, rollers, and flat out pouring it into the repair. No, we're not kidding, and here's how it works. Now, the first thing to do is clean off your surface. This is done with a simple glass cleaner. And of course, to apply primer, whether you're spraying it or pouring it on like we are, you have to abrade the surface, which means putting scratches in it, so the primer has something to hold on to. Now, we located the dents earlier by using the shiny paint and the reflective surface, but you can clearly see where the low point of the dent is when you sand over the top of it. Doing the crosshatch does two things. It literally shows me where the low point of the dent is, and it makes sure that I've got it scraped up and scratched enough to hold the primer. If you've ever done body work before, you know that there's something missing. I'm not wearing a dust mask. That's because there's no dust suspended in the air. Now, when you're mixing the rust defender, it's pretty darn easy. There's 4 quarts in the can, and there's 4 divisions on the side of the catalyst bottle. Since we're mixing only 16 ounces, I'm mixing a half of a measure of the catalyst in, just to be precise. Now, after you've thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly mixed in your catalyst, well, you're ready for your application. And our application in this case is pouring it on with the help of a 98-cent ketchup bottle I got from the local grocery store. Now, the liquid primer surfacer, when it's poured onto the dents, is going to flow out on its own. The industry term for this is self-leveling, and it does it quite quickly. So you have to be aware that your hood is as level as possible. And what we're doing, it's not rocket science, it's self-explanatory, and you can literally see what's happening. Now, as thick as this is, it's not going to dry instantly. It's probably not going to dry in the recommended dry time. So we're going to leave this stuff overnight and come back and block it out and see how we did. Now, since we have an excessive amount of surfacer mixed, we're going to do a couple of different fun things. We're going to put our cake batter on our mirror bases. Now, there's no technique here. It's just pouring the stuff on. However, on a vertical surface like the door and the cab corner, well, we need to repair the dent with conventional filler first, and then use a different application of the surfacer. We're blocking the finishing putty with 80 grit on a soft sander. And once you're satisfied with the repair, you're already set up for your surfacer, which this time will be applied with a roller that we got from a home center for about $1.50. Now, like we said, with a vertical surface, it's a bit of a challenge, but the primer does build pretty good, even with this application. Coat number 3.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Well, while we give Kevin's primer a chance to dry, it'll give us a chance to tell you about the gauges we're going to be using in Project Rolling Thunder. Now, they come from Tachometer, and it's their Elite series of gauges. Now, these are full sweep electric gauges, and they're not only very precise and accurate, but they're also quite functional. Take the fuel level gauge, for example. Now, typically, you'd have to match your gauge up to the resistance or ohm range of your existing fuel level sender. But with this, well, you just simply program the gauge to match what you already have, saving you time, money, and a little bit of hassle. These gauges also streamline your dash by eliminating the need for an external warning light or shift light. Say you want to know when your engine water temp hits 230 degrees. Well, you don't need to wire in a separate light or audible alarm. Simply program the gauge to change colors, one of the 7 available colors, at 230 degrees, and you'll notice out of the corner of your eye that the gauge face has changed colors and your engine's starting to get hot. Now, the Tach is cool as well. It's got 3 stages of lighting. Say, for the sake of argument, our engine's got a rev limit of 6,000 RPM, but we want to know a few hundred RPM ahead of time that we're getting close. So we program it at 5,700 and 6,000 RPM. 0 to 5,700, gauge face is going to be green. When we hit 5,700, it turns amber. And at 6,000 RPM, it turns bright red, letting us know time's up and we better grab another gear. And the best part about all this stuff is you don't have to take your eye off the road or the track. At speed, things happen very quickly, and the more you can keep your eyes up, well, the more you see and the more aware you are. Now, just a few screws hold the one-piece clear plastic lens and black gauge bezel to the instrument cluster. Then we popped out the gauges themselves, which are just kind of pressed into the housing. And with that done, we can flip it over and remove all the warning and indicator bulbs and rip off the printed circuit. It's just not necessary. And we simply made a cardboard template and marked which side faces up. And here's how the aluminum panel will fit over the cluster, but we've clearly got a problem because the gauges need room to recess into the cluster, so we're going to have to make a little bit of a modification. So I just use a small drill bit to locate the approximate center of the gauges and the clearance they're going to need. Then I could use a hole saw to open things up a little bit. Now, these probably aren't going to be opened up enough, but the plastic's easy to work with, and I can go back later and trim as needed. Well, that looks kind of destroyed. That's what we want. We just need this plastic chassis. Now, the cool thing about a project like this is that the gauge style, the material you use, and the gauge layout is all up to you. All right, with that done, we're going to run into our second problem, and that is, well, obviously, we need to remove the trim bezels for the factory gauges, and we've got to get rid of the clear plastic. because, well, these have clear plastic on them themselves, and we need access to the programmable buttons. So, after quickly removing the clear plastic lens, we could get to work modifying the gauge bezel. Now what I'm doing is using a razor blade to create a score in the plastic, deep enough so when we go back with a pair of pliers, it'll give us a nice clean break and we can get rid of the excess. What we end up with is exactly what we wanted. All right, well there they are. Now we still have some work to do to finish mounting the gauges, and we obviously have to finish wiring them up, but you get the gist of it. And I gotta say, I'm really happy with the way they turned out. They've got a nice clean appearance, the gauges are in a stock location so you know you can see them easily, and they've still got an aftermarket or racy look to them, which I think is kind of cool. Now you can do this whether you're working on a late model truck like we are, or if you're working on an older pickup truck and you want to combine stock instrument cluster components with accurate aftermarket gauges. As far as the mounting panel goes, well, we're just going to leave the aluminum panel raw, but you could cover it in any number of materials or paint it to match the rest of the truck. Just get creative and have fun with it.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, we let our primer surfacer sit overnight to make sure it was good and dry before we started blocking it to see how it responded to that incredible thickness. And I would say it's good and dry. Check this. Look at this one. Well, it's not coming out of there. Regardless, we've made our point, I think. The thickness of that, the ease of application, it's pretty cool. Let's see how it blocks out. This is 80 grit, and this is my mirror base. I'm not going to finish this right now, but you get the point. It kind of acts as its own guide code. It's got all the attributes of this really good primer surfacer, and it took a brush to put it on. And here's the other point I wanted to make. This is all the safety gear that I had to use with this. I didn't have to use my fresh air. I didn't have to use my spray suit and the cumbersome pack that goes along with it. One more point. This is really important because everybody's thinking environmentally friendly. We did not generate an ounce of liquid waste by using this product, which would have had to go into a bucket like this and go off to our friends at Safety Clean to be responsibly and properly disposed of the correct way. So we've just saved some time, used a great product, and we were green. Let's go see how the primer did on the truck. The blocking process starts with 80 grit, just to get the heavy work out of the way and get down to the basic shape. Then I'll switch to 180 to smooth and feather the repair into the surrounding panel. By the way, here's a quick tip. Check the masking tape out on the plastic handle. That's just so I don't bang into it with a sandpaper and ruin a good part. Well, there you go. The dent is fixed, it's leveled, there's no pinholes, and another couple of stages of sanding, and I'm ready for paint. Roll on primer. Who knew? Now, because of the crown of the hood, the way it curves over, gravity was dragging my primer down. I had to make a little masking tape down to contain it. Boy, now it's like a rock. I'm using the same two steps for blocking, but remember, if you're working on a late model vehicle, most of these hoods are aluminum and they require a light touch. Now, most of these hail dents are flat out gone, filled in. This guy, well, it was a deeper dent and needs a little bit more primer. But my point is this, if you find the right products, work within the rules of the chemicals, well, you can make your weekend paint and body projects a whole lot simpler and work smarter, not harder.
You're watching Trucks. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerBlockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own Trucks collection, delivered right to your door from the PowerBlock.
Hey guys, well, we've had a chance to finalize our gauge layout. We've got our tack hanging from the A-pillar, we've got our stock instrument cluster loaded up with aftermarket gauges, and we've made up an aluminum panel to house the remaining gauges that wouldn't fit in the stock cluster. Now the tack is just temporarily zip tied in place, but when we do the final installation, we'll either bolt it down or go with something a little bit more substantial. And while the tack isn't directly in the line of sight of the driver, well, it's not far off. And with the multi-stage shift light built right into the face of the gauge, we shouldn't have any problems figuring out when to shift. Now to make room for the gauges in the center of the dash, well, we just got rid of the CD player. After all, we've got a supercharged V8 and a healthy exhaust system to listen to, so we can make all the music that we want to hear with our right foot. And we saved a couple of pounds in the process. Now we've got our gauges divided into two groups, what we're calling priority 1 and priority 2 gauges. The ones we can see more clearly are our priority 1 gauges, and they're the things that have a detrimental effect on the life of our engine. Things like oil pressure, oil temperature, water temp, and our air-fuel ratio, along with the necessary speedometer. And these are the things we really want to keep tabs on. Now over here we've got the gauges that are a little less important. We've got fuel level, boost level, and our voltage. Now both of these gauge panels have room, so we can add on indicators or LEDs for our turn signals, high beams, and our check engine warning light. Because after all, we're going to be able to plug in a scanner and communicate with the PCM just like you would on any other OBD2 equipped truck.
With the hail damage on the hood fixed, a couple other whiskey nicks or pop knots on the doors repaired, and our mirror base is fixed and primed, all with a rather unconventional method, this truck is that much closer to being prepped for final paint. And let me tell you what, that is a major milestone for any project. Not to mention Ryan's awesome work on the cage, gauge placement, and all the other details that we've done with this truck, trying to make it something we could really be proud of. And hopefully, it'll live up to the rendering that Steve Longacre created and the name, Rolling Thunder. You've heard us talk about rockauto.com, and they're an excellent online resource for just about anything you'd want for your car. But it's not just for cars. They service trucks, marine, and motorcycle equipment too.
Now rockauto.com has a huge parts database. After you select the year, make, and model that you're working on, along with a couple other selections, you can find the parts that you're looking for, easily categorized. Now, not only do you typically get a multitude of manufacturers to select your replacement parts from, you also get informative pictures and helpful installation tips.
Now, parts ordering is easy. The parts get to you fast, and in the upper left-hand corner of the website, you can see just how much money you're going to save with rockauto.com over just about every other parts store. Thanks for watching Trucks. See you guys next time.